All right, our star ratchet has two ellipses, and they're defined as a 30-degree ellipse. And when I get back to the optional on this videos, we'll talk a little bit more about what happens with the ellipses and some of the ways that they're defined. But if you Google a 30-degree ellipse, the definition is that in this case we're given the major axis, so at 140, so our minor axis will be 70. And then let's see if we can zoom that up a little bit. Just off the screen. There we go, 150. So our minor will be 75. Right, so this is another one of those. We could generate the ellipses and the holes, and then this interior geometry we're going to want to do separately just because it has a little bit more complexity. This is, well, assuming it's in millimeters, it is now. So part metric, front plane, open the sketch. This should be part of the getting used to that process of we go in, we pick the plane. We're not always going to pick the front plane. We could put one on the top plane for whatever reason. It's going to become a little bit more in play when we get to the assembly and I look at a part and say, well, when I bring this into the assembly, it'd be nice if it was already in the orientation that I want, instead of just drawing everything on the front plane and then having to manipulate it around. If I see it, then it would be a great tool to save 30 seconds. All right, so under the ellipse, we have the ellipse, the partial ellipse, the parabola, and the conic. All right, so the ellipse goes through cuts through the whole cone at an angle. Parabola cuts it at an angle, but only partially. And a conic is a vertical cut through a cone. But they all generate splines, or they're all generating splines in our geometry. So when we go into the ellipse, we're going to drag out in one direction. Does not matter major or minor at this point. When I grab another portion of it, then those blue dashed lines will become solid, and that will give us our node points for the location and degrees of the ellipse. So selecting any of the node points and the origin, I can make that vertical. I'll go into the dimension, and we know that our overall is 140. So our minor is 70. All right, one more time, we go into the ellipse. I pick the origin, I drag out some direction, drag it back in, go into my smart dimension. Now this one did not, and this is where I'm going to have to be a little careful since I didn't make this horizontal to begin with. Notice I'm getting a linear dimension, but since I'm off a little bit, this is going to jump and change 80.16 and 80.8. It's not a big number, but it's the difference between the actual linear dimension and having a little tangent error or cosine error going on in there. So we said that, oh, I should have done the overall anyway. So let's just kick out of that, and I will Control Z. And let's see what we get if I go to the node points at 150. So same thing, 160, I get a little closer, 160.32, 160.15. All right, so it is generating just a little bit of an error. So that's one of the reasons why I want to apply the relations. Select, hold down the control button, select. I lost my little context, so I'm just going to pop over here to the property manager and apply a horizontal. All right, so we've got the 150, and there's not any rule that says I have to do this in a specific order. It's mainly that I'm trying to eliminate issues, errors before they arise. So when you see those come up, go slow, pay attention to what's going on in your geometry, and then we'll get it figured out from there. All right, so at this point we can use the contours and regions. I know I've done a couple of trims. Because of the contours and regions, I really do not trim. I haven't trimmed, if I say 5 years, it's probably been longer since I've regularly used the trim tool. But if I wanted this to open up, I can trim these. The node points are going to stay there. Do not trim or delete those because they are the definition of the ellipses, even though now it is basically a partial ellipse. The hole locations then, we'll drag one of these out. I don't know that there's really any reason to mirror those as for drawing 4. We'll do the select, hold down the control button, select, select, and select. On the pop-up we have equal, or we come over to the property manager and make equal. Right-clicking and going to the smart dimension. One of the reasons that I get out of a command and go to select is I might not be sure what I want to do next. So getting into select just puts it back into cursor mode, and I'm not really doing anything that requires an immediate decision. So we have a diameter of 24, 4 holes. Place that, 24. And notice too that and what that does then is I'm pretty much going right into the next command. So in this case I need to pick my points, so I need to be in select anyway. And I don't often, let's see, where is it? We come up here to select, and then some of those select items, I hardly ever select all. I see that and then I go, maybe not. All right, so horizontal, select, control select the origin, control select the center point, and vertical. Now in this one we're going to be 50 from the origin, and I don't have to worry about this moving, and I did the wrong one. I grabbed the ellipse, so that's another good reason that I might want to make this a separate sketch and feature by cut extruding it. Let's see, so 50 on the sides, 45 on the vertical. And we'll just go ahead and dimension it that way as opposed to the mirroring. Now on the control side, if I want to change that to 50 and that one to 60, I have 4 dimensions instead of 2. It's not really a big deal at this point, but it's just that making sure that it doesn't get overlooked, because if I come in and I change that one and this one's kind of lost in the mix, I may not realize that I haven't adjusted or made the same adjustment 4 times. All right, so kind of cleaning up the dimensions in the work area helps too. So we're going to extrude boss base 6 millimeters and hit OK. All right, on this one, again, we're going to either extrude this out. I still think that this is probably going to be a cut through as a spline. Without seeing the right or left side view, one of the other views, it's making an assumption, but we go in, click that face, I get the sketch tool started, and then I'm going to draw the first couple of lines. So when we're looking at this profile, and I'm going to right click and get into select so I don't drag or accidentally draw something else. We have 5 by 2.5, and let's see, where is our dimension? There's got to be a base circle somewhere. 18 is our total. There it is, diameter of 40. It was hiding on me. All right, so it's again looking through the noise. So I want an arc segment, and this arc segment is going to be a center point arc I'm going to drag it out to this endpoint and then just make a little segment. If it did not go the way I wanted, I would just drag the other way, go completely around, just kind of follow it. But it did pretty much what I want. So our diameter of 40 means that we're going to have a radius of 20, but I would like to see that denoted as a 40. So I can right click, and in the context, we'll have the radius, and I can switch it to a diameter if I need to. That's also the same as coming over to the property manager, going into the leaders, and not sure why that one's still highlighted in gray, but I've got my diameter, so I'm good with it. Let's put a few more dimensions. So we have the 5 and the 2.5, and when I go to pattern this, I really don't, I'm going to have enough strange things going on without it moving those dimensions unexpectedly. So if I right click, select the midpoint, right, so we're going to grab that line, get to its midpoint, hold down the control, and pick the origin and make those verticals. Now I have a lot of this geometry all of a sudden is defined. The two endpoints are the only ones that I'm really concerned with. So I don't want that midpoint, so I'm going to use the scroll wheel and zoom up, pointing at that geometry, zoom up on it a little bit and get the biggest targets I can. Hold down the control button, select both of those, and then we'll come over to equal. And now I have only that endpoint is left to define. So if I window pick right to left, I'll make sure I get everything inside of the window. This becomes a circular sketch pattern. Let's see, do I want to dimension the radius? Probably not, because I already have the diameter at 40. It's probably not going to do anything for me. So 18 is the total number of instances, 18 required. We go ahead and see the preview. Everything looks good there, so I'll accept it. And then my last item is to drag the arc endpoint back to where it goes coincident. And then we can go into the features and extrude cut. And there is a possibility the geometry will be a little bit harder to make. If we were doing the tops, we'd have to figure out how to spline those. It would probably be a separate part and either attached, bolted in, pinned, pressed, something along those lines. Even when we cut this, we're going to have to use a wire or a broach, which will cut this in small increments until it cuts that shape. So if we're doing a lot of these, it would probably be a broaching process to make that shape. If I was making one and it was custom, could put it on the wire EDM, and wire EDM is electro discharge. As it contacts metal, anything that's conductive, it makes a little spark and it degrades that material and cuts odd shapes with a very minimal radius in the corners. If I could get away with it, I would put a radius in there, but we're already pretty small. 2.5 millimeters is about 100 thousandths. So there's not really a lot of room to get in there even with a small tool. So this one then is going to be 2-17, throw my initials on the end of it, and save it. All right, so ellipses, splines, patterns, we have all of these tools to save us some time, make us a little more efficient.